Welcome to the Believe Podcast Network SoCal Sweat. My name is Ann McDaniels, a former NFL cheerleader and product manager turned actress and model who dreams of being a UFC fighter. Meow. Learning strategies to help motivate others leads me to bring you interviews each week from a range of athletes, experts in fitness and nutrition, and so much more. Thanks for listening to Believe, the #1 podcast for working professionals, and let's push our endorphins to higher performance through SoCal Sweat. This is your host, Ann McDaniels, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Believe SoCal Sweat. In this episode, I'm so excited to bring you Coach Cimoroni. He's a master wrestling coach, not to mention an inventor, a CEO, and an entrepreneur. He has such a love and passion for all of his athletes. His wrestlers are everything to him, and not only does he coach them to major championships, but he follows them all the way through life via mentorships, sharing their stories, and helping them professionally. He has a podcast called Blood Time. What is blood time? What does that mean? Well, interestingly enough, Blood Time stands for the 5 minutes that each wrestler has with no limit in the amount of timeouts for bleeding. Once the bleeding has stopped on the mat and treatment has been given, they stop the blood clock. In those 5 minutes, where everything is cleaned up, that is a magic moment between the coach and the athlete, to mentor, to coach to the win. And hence, this is a clever play on words for Coach Cimoroni's podcast, Blood Time. It's a full coaching business and showcasing of athletes, coaches all over the world. This episode will showcase my interview with Coach Cimoroni, all about resilience, accountability, and how we can truly win in life. And I now have the honor of introducing my guest, Coach Peter Cimoroni of Blood Time and Master Wrestling Coach. Good afternoon, Coach Cimoroni in Cleveland. How are you today?
Very good. Having a really good day. Very good.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, can you just tell us a little bit? You have the Blood Time podcast.
Yes.
You're also a coach, a wrestler, an entrepreneur, and you have so many other organizations that you're involved with.
Yes.
What was your childhood in growing up in your sports and your household, and how did you get involved with all of these wonderful things?
Well, it's interesting because my mother's brother was the first state place winner and captain of the Cleveland Heights Tigers wrestling team, Heights High School wrestling team. So I had that in my blood. And my father also wrestled for Shaker Heights High School, which they're both East Side Cleveland public schools. And so I had that. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I had that in my background, but also too, I loved the other sports. I loved football and baseball and basketball. I never stopped playing. I'd come home when it was dark, if that, sometimes you play outside, but, and that was our computer. That was our internet. Right. So, yes. But also too, being in an Italian and an Armenian family, we were surrounded by food. And so I ate a lot and I got really fat. So I was a very obese child, preteen. So when I was 12, 13 years old, I was barely 5 feet tall and 165 pounds with a 41-inch waist.
And how old were you?
Just before I turned 13.
Oh, yeah. It's a hard age on top of it.
Yes, very hard age. And then we had my baby brother was coming too. Change of life baby was coming. So we knew we were going to have a baby brother. So I didn't want my baby brother to see, a fat brother. And I went to my parents, and my mother's a nutritionist, which is interesting. And so but my grandmother was, the kind of Italian grandmother that eat, right? So yeah. I listened to both of them, but
that's love. That's how they show love.
Exactly. Well, everybody that was going through the depression, when you were skinny, it was because you didn't have the food. You just literally didn't have the food. So they came from a different mentality. But so anyhow, having said that, I went to my mother and I said, I really want to do something about this. So she took me to a doctor, our family doctor, back in the day, right? And he put me on a lifestyle of just limiting carbohydrates and eating whatever else I wanted that was lean meats and vegetables and a little bit limited fat, but not really, and sugar, limited sugar. and I lost 30 pounds that summer.
Wow. So it was already keto based, Atkins based at that time.
Yes, it was
So he
more
was
of
ahead of his
a
time.
little bit less. It was like Atkins or keto light. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I lost that weight, and I grew like 2 or 3 inches, and I went from a 41-inch waist to a 32-inch waist in one summer.
Good for you.
Yeah, and by the time I was a sophomore in high school, I had a 28-inch waist, and today at 63 and a half, almost 64 years old, I'm wearing 29-inch skinny Levi's. So
Get it,
yeah.
get it, Italian Armenian. I love it. I love it.
So I'm right now scratch weight in high school wrestling, 132 to 134. So
unbelievable. So that was your sweet spot wrestling weight.
yeah, that's what. Well, I played football at 152, and then I wrestled at 32, and then in college I wrestled at either 34 or 42, depending upon the situation.
Now, question on that, because you had struggled with your weight as a child, although that was just like not really your fault. It was the delicious cooking.
Yes.
And then you went to this diet regimen.
Yeah.
And then wrestling is all about the dieting and the dieting down for cutting weight. But then football, you want to bulk up. Right. Was that tough for you? Did that bring back like bad memories? I mean, or were you already able to manipulate your body so well with nutrition from what you knew?
Yeah, that was the education really gave me a big leg up, particularly during that generation when really nutrition was, nobody knew about nutrition. So, I mean, we were making, people were making weight back in the Stone Age. This is the mid 70s, putting your finger down your throat and running in plastic suits and not eating for 3 days and just really stupid things, right?
Right.
And so I was lucky. I had an evolved sense of self, but also an evolved sense of intellect because of that information I got from my physician and supported by my parents. And then I took it to the next level, and I coach that way. We do not cut weight. We get in shape. And that just comes off naturally. So
how were you able to manipulate that? Because so many, I went to the University of Minnesota, which is a huge wrestling school.
Oh my God, the Golden Gophers are a phenomenal program.
Yes. Yeah. And I knew Marty. I had dated some of the guys on the team, one of the guys on the team.
Sure.
So I knew Marty, the kind of controversial coach.
Yes.
And I saw what they were, I knew what they were doing because they were just exhausted.
Well, the creatine was what really got everybody's attention. So.
Yes, I think so. Was that the controversial side of what Marty was doing?
Well, yeah, and also there was some. I'm not sure about Marty, but there was a lot of Adderall throughout that time frame, and so that's just a toxic combination, man, very toxic combination. And then you throw in the mix where the sport is highly exercised. I mean, it is the most difficult sport to get in shape for on the planet. There's nothing even remotely, because for those 6 minutes you just have to be a furnace basically. So and you're going against another furnace who's just as tough, if not tougher. So it's basically hand-to-hand combat.
I agree with you, and you talk about an autonomous sport, and I also see that. I love UFC and MMA fights.
Sure.
And all the fighting and the training, and I have heard multiple times that the wrestlers are the best fighters because you guys have the most just keen sense of everything that's going on, and you have to get in the best shape of your life for that. I mean, just like a half Nelson to stay in that and hold that. That's such resistance and everything. And I think that just your attention to that and the autonomy of it, you can't blame anybody else. And this is why you've created this program, because you can't blame the other guy for shooting the hoop and they didn't pass it to you, or the football player that you didn't get that touchdown because you didn't get it from the wide receiver, what have you. It's all about your performance.
It's a very honest sport, and there's nowhere to hide.
Right.
And it's just you against another person, and it's mano a mano. And now we're having these fantastic females participate at the highest of levels, and these women matches are incredible. I mean, just wow.
Fantastic. They're brutal.
Yeah, fantastic talent. But yeah, the sport, I love it because it holds you completely accountable. It's based on absolute meritocracy, and there's nowhere to hide. So it's the way life is. People don't realize, We try to make it not that way through government and through other programs. It's still it's just the nature of humanity. We are based on merit.
But don't you think we've gotten way too soft and like the helicopter parents and, oh, woe is me, I've got to blame someone else and, oh, feel sorry for me. It's like, where did that shift happen from where we were disciplined and like my parents and grandparents, and then I see a lot of my generation just kind of like blaming other people
Sure.
and just not taking responsibility for things.
Well, I'll tell you what it is, Ann. And I'll give you another term. It's the snowplow parent is even worse than the helicopter parent, because the snowplow parent gets rid of all the bumps. There's no more bumps. They take care of all that. Now, how do you prepare? That is ultimately, to me, ultimately not love. The love for a parent is to get you prepared for the real world, to understand that there's consequences to actions, and there's an action and a reaction. So, and that's what discipline does. And the kids that come into my program crave that, and they get it, and I love them. I mean, I tell them they're all my sons when they walk in there, and if we have a female, she's my daughter. But I hold them to that standard. And I think we got that way because we left the street and the factory and the farm. We left tough stuff in our backseat. And now we have all these pretty much easy. I mean, I haven't coached a kid in probably 10 years that's ever sniffed a factory. That's hard work, man. Or working landscaping, or working a farm, or working, distribution and stacking 5-gallon can paint cans 5 high. That's what we did. Everybody had those jobs, and you got and you kind of got in some street fights, and and so it was a different world because you had to be tough. But
and you gain more respect for yourself when that happens.
Yeah, you do. And I think that the kids that are tough today come from great parenting. I mean, great. And I love my community, Schrin Falls. I love my community. The parents are fantastic. They are throwbacks. I mean, I feel like I'm coaching in the 80s and 90s again.
That's amazing. I mean, maybe is it just that part of Cleveland because it's kind of like an industrial area?
No, it's not. It's quite the opposite. But
really?
These parents are self-made, most of them.
Okay.
So they busted their their tail to get there, and they just won't let their kids ride. Most of these kids, like I have 2 brothers, and their father is in the produce industry. Well, he's up, at the crack of dawn, if you will. Easy for me to say. And he, he's downtown by 4:30 in the morning, and his sons realize what he does. And so these kids respect that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Well, and then you look at the parents that pay for their kids to go to college, like the Lochlins, like Lori Loughlin and the daughters.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things, but this has been happening for a long time, and
Sure.
I think it was even Bill Gates didn't help his kids. Like, now they're getting divorced, but
Yeah.
A lot of people do. And then I read an article on one of the NBA players said, I wanted to take care of my kids and give them what I didn't have, but now my son wants to get in the NBA, and he goes, he's soft.
Yeah.
Get out there and play in Compton with the basketball hoops out there. Mm-hmm. Those kids are going to make it the NBA. Yeah. Things like that. So,
well, look, at the end of the day, all you can do as a famous parent or a rich parent or whatever legacy parent is give them an access. You still got to perform. That's what merit, the meritocracy is. So, it's the child will embarrass themselves if they don't put in the work.
Exactly.
And so that's what I love about a guy like Buffett, Warren Buffett. He's giving away his stuff, and he says, "Let's go, kids. See what you're made of."
Yeah.
But again, too, these kids still have access. Obviously, they're Warren Buffett's kids. But at the end of the day, I think you do a kid a disservice by not making them do the work. Now, again, I think it's a great combination if you can give them access and they do the work, and then boy, oh boy, right? Like what Oprah says, when preparation meets opportunity, magic happens. So that's really where I think that's where most people should live. And I think sometimes we have a not a jealousy, but I think a greed of access. I think that's where there's a lot of disconnect in our society, is the access to power and the access to capital.
Sure.
So a lot of people feel frustrated because they don't have access to capital or access to power, and they're prepared. They've done the work and they can't break through. I think that's what you're seeing, a lot of frustration today.
And I think even more so is with the social media pressures.
Sure.
Like you feel like you're already having that greed and like wanting to perform and be powerful. And then you're seeing other people better than you, quote unquote, on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all these things. But that's not the case. Do you think social media has made things worse? I mean, I look at some of these influencers who just think that they can get paid $1 million to endorse a brand, but that's so few and far between. And that there's no work ethic there. Because I
agree with you what you're saying. Technology, though, is agnostic. It's great and it's horrible. It depends on who uses it. Just like, in technology, a gun is technology, right?
Sure.
If a gun is being used by a wonderful human being to save lives, right, it's great. If it's being used by a despicable human being to take lives, it's bad. Same thing with the internet. Okay. And so what you see on the internet is people that are not talented or just maybe have some assets that, whether it's a female or male, have assets that they just exploit, and they have a built-in audience. I live differently. I want to be undeniable in the content that I'm bringing to the marketplace of the highest quality of humanity that I can. And that's what Blood Time is all about. And that's why I'm so blessed to have these remarkable people around me. And I think the internet is great because these people are people that I never would have met, get to hear these remarkable stories from these incredible individuals. So
absolutely. Yeah. And this is how I met you. And I'm so thrilled about that.
Yes, me too.
How did the Blood Time podcast come about? And describe the words and how you came up with that title, which I think is brilliant.
Sure. Well, Blood Time in our sport means time to get your blood taken care of, right, in the middle of a match. Blood Time in the podcast means the bonding moment between the athlete and the coach. And in that moment, both are transformed into something better. And what does that athlete do with that transformation in the real world? Not necessarily in the sport, okay? Although the sport is part of it. And so it's that transformative moment. And where this came from was 40 years of coaching and coaching some remarkable individuals during those 40 years and seeing what they've done in the real world. And they came back to me as younger men or middle-aged men as I aged, and they taught me lessons. So the student became the teacher. And then I took those lessons and retaught them or evolved that thought process into the next generation of athletes that I coach, as well as business leaders that I also help out and sit on the board of directors and also have as clients or vendor partners. And so, what I did was in 2010, I started to write a book called Benevolent Capitalism. I finished it in 2014. And in that book, there's a chapter, The Student Becomes the Teacher. And I identified 6 of those individuals in case study stories, if you will. And that was the etymology of Blood Time, the podcast. And then I had one of my dearest friends' sons start a podcast production company. And I went to him, I said, let's do this. And he goes, let's do it, coach. And we've been off, we're finishing up our 2nd season with 70 episodes. We've done a brand extension called the C-Suite Forum. So we're now interviewing CEOs. We just interviewed Archie Griffin's nephew. Archie Griffin, a 2-time Heisman Trophy winner from Ohio State University, the only 2-time trophy winner in the history of the NCAA. And so, we're doing that. And we just signed an agreement with Evergreen Podcasting Network, with Salem Broadcasting. And we're going to be international. So it's pretty exciting.
Oh, that's amazing. And that book was called Benevolent Capitalism?
Yes. And you can get it on Amazon. In both Kindle as well as paperback.
I'll put that in the podcast notes for sure.
Awesome.
So what the goal of the podcast and your coaching business is to inspire and to kind of bring back that old-fashioned real grit, take accountability to success.
Yes, the meritocracy of the world, but also to empathy. I'm big at leading with, love and failing forward. learning from your mistakes, but leading with love, and also being understanding that, we're really a merit-based species. And so to give someone fish is a disservice. To teach them to fish is highest the highest form of love, so that they can teach others and they can feed themselves the rest of their lives. I don't mean to sound trite, but it's true. So if I teach someone to be to have the foundational pieces of a great human being, what ripple effect can they bring to the world? Because good and bad does not happen in a vacuum, and they happen and they ripple throughout time and space. And so we need to understand that. So I have a chapter: do good always. Not 99% of the time, 100% of the time. So, we teach those lessons every day in our room during the season.
That's great. Now, you had kind of a catastrophic knee injury.
Yes.
And and I so relate to you because I shattered my femur and my arm last year on a film job.
Oh, that's terrible.
So, and as an athlete and a very active person, it has been hell. Hell.
Oh, my heart goes out to you.
Oh, well, thank you. And I don't mean to have sympathy, but I just...
Well, you do. You have my empathy and sympathy.
I appreciate it. I mean, it's just, and especially for people like us where
Right.
that is what we live for. That is my drug, is fitness and working out and things like that. And it's been taken away.
Yeah.
It was taken away then during COVID. I was literally on my floor with no help or anything like that. I mean, I did everything myself, and emergency surgeries in the hospital for almost 2 weeks. And then I came home, but like not being able to have that and then just staying mentally healthy and sane. In the meantime, I started the podcast. I'm starting a book and I'm working on some inventions, but I can't help sometimes but be angry and resentful and pissed.
Sure.
And I know that's okay, but it's like, then I'm like, okay, don't be a baby. And I've cried. I'm not a crier, but I've cried so many times.
Sure.
And how do you advise people with these things? Because I'm so concerned that this is catastrophic in the format that I may not have the career that I had before. It scares me. How do you not get resentful? And a lot of these athletes, they have a knee blowout in a football game, and it's just, and like you.
Yeah. Well,
how do you deal with it?
I think what you give your permission to feel what you're feeling. Okay. And to really love yourself, because you are so worthy of that. And then when you think about that, right, now you have this foundation of such inner love and strength that you can start to build that block, and then that next block, and that next block. And so what I look at, it's an old saying, right? You don't want to eat the elephant in one bite. But if you take it through 500 little slices, before you know it, 500 days later, you've got yourself an entire elephant eaten. And so I think you take a little slice every day of accomplishment, and don't beat yourself up for a setback. The biggest thing that we have to understand is that we have been prey all of our existence. So we have this negative self-talk because it was actually healthy for us to say we're in danger. So what you need to do is you need to talk 10 times more positive to negate that danger, right?
Yeah.
And that comes from love. So that's why you have so much self-loathing in the world and so much fear. And now, I'm not minimizing what you've gone through. Please understand that I hold that in really an understanding position. But don't feel that it's the end. It's the beginning.
Right.
It's a new beginning, and you will build up a new world based on what has been presented to you. But if you don't do it with acceptance and love and a movement forward, right, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So that would be what I would recommend.
I fear losing time. I feel like I've been out of the game, and I feel like and athletes would feel that way in pro sports, and maybe you felt that way. Yeah. Like, okay, that's time lost. That's your golden time. That's your time of your prime, and you lost.
But I hear what you're saying. But I got my knee injury at 19 years old, so you don't get more in your prime at that point. But that brought me to my coaching career immediately, and I am a far better coach than I was a wrestler. Far better. I've accomplished far more. And then when I had to retire the first time from coaching because I had children, I created Wrestlers in Business, which is now 40,000 members strong. So you start to create different things that, support what you've been doing foundationally before, whatever transition you're making.
Exactly.
And so, like right now, we just saw a miracle almost with Phil Mickelson winning the PGA title.
Exactly, at 50.
Right? And he has psoriatic psoriasis.
Arthritis.
Okay.
Arthritis.
Yeah. So think about that. He right, and he got that when he was in his early 30s. So he's been dealing with that for 18 years.
And his wife almost died of breast cancer.
Exactly.
He had to deal with that stress.
Exactly. So, no matter who we are, right, we have to deal with stuff.
Exactly.
How did he come back? So there's a lot of role models. There's a lot of heroes out there that we can look to their case study, if you will, as great foundational things for us to move forward.
Absolutely. How do you, with you or yourself or your athletes or even your children,
Mm-hmm.
how do you teach them to deal with jealousy issues and comparison?
Yeah.
Of they're better than me, I'm not, how can you create a drive for yourself in that gray area of not being nasty or sinful or going over the top in jealousy?
Sure. Well, jealousy is based in fear, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like arrogance. Confidence to me is the ultimate self-love. Arrogance is the ultimate fear.
Sure.
And so jealousy runs with arrogance. Confidence. If you're confident because you've done the work, put in the work. And that means going to, a therapist. A therapist to me is a personal trainer for the soul.
Sure.
Right. And so you marry that, with a personal trainer or a coach or whoever that is physically, you marry that with your psychology, your soul, and whatever belief you have, I think is also, your faith is also incredibly important. So you need to marry this trinity, if you will, of mind, body, and spirit. And I think that if you do that, you're hard to be attacked. And jealousy becomes such a foreign concept to you when you're so healthy, and looking for, how do I serve, not be served? And so, coaching is the ultimate servant mentality. But we have so many, and we've just seen this over the past year, so many people incredibly serve their community, the first line responders, your medical professionals, your teachers, your grocery workers. Those people, to me, were the least applauded, and they went to work every day with hundreds of people surrounding them. God bless them.
In danger while some people are sitting on their butts collecting unemployment. I 100% agree with you.
You know what I mean? So I think that ultimately it's self-love via self-loathing, and we have a lot of self-loathing in our world, and I think there's no, I'm a big believer in the ultimate evolution, and the ultimate evolution is love. We're all going to evolve to love and a state of love and a state of empathy.
Absolutely.
There could be there can't be any type of prejudice if you're truly empathetic, if you understand what that other person's going through.
Sure. But in the world of highly competitive athletics and highly competitive film and television, which is what I'm in,
right?
It's when you're that competitive, it's hard to sometimes, take a breather and love yourself when you're seeing, if you constantly are doing the work and you're not feeling the results. How do you counsel your wrestlers who are maybe working completely on their nutrition, completely on their workouts, doing more, and they're not performing at their level of what they expect of themselves? How do you advise that? Or how do you advise people even in business where they're constantly doing that, like CEOs, but they're not seeing the results of their work?
Yeah, I go through this every day with myself, let alone with my people and with my clients and with my vendors and with my athletes and with my assistant coaches, and even administration and all that. And I say, we have to do a self-diagnostic on a daily basis, but more importantly, we have to understand that sometimes our best is just not good enough. It's I mean, I could practice. I could practice 24 hours a day and probably never score a point on LeBron James in a basketball game. I'm not going to make the NBA. I'm not going to be the next Al Pacino. But I'm going to be the best Peter Cimoroni that I'm put on this earth to be.
I think if you put LeBron James through a wrestling workout for 3
Kick his
hours
ass.
and then played him at basketball, you may score a point. That's what I'm thinking.
That's right. I would definitely get him on the mat. That's no question. But even though I'm only 134 pounds, I'd get him. But having said that, but honestly, Ann, I coach kids, and I say to you, if your absolute best is to take third at this tournament, okay, and you left it on the mat, you're my hero. You're my hero. So I know that may not be an amazing amount of comfort, but that's just the reality of the world. I'm never going to be taller than 5'7". That's what this good Lord put me on the earth at, 5'7". So,
but you carry it well, and you're 6'3" in who you are.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
And I'm never going to be, blonde haired and blue eyed and look like a Swede. So I mean, that's just who I am. So.
Well, dark and handsome does well too.
You got the Swede look. There you go.
Exactly. So funny. Yeah, it's your coaching style is so. It's so interesting because I guess growing up with wrestlers and things like that, and it was in hockey. Those were big in my area where I grew up, and
sure.
The coaches would be very stern. And for some reason, I always gravitated towards that. I'm a professional. I was a former NFL cheerleader, and other sports, things like that.
Yeah.
And my dance team coaches were the nastiest of all people, but I liked that. I gravitated towards that. For some reason, I did well with that type of discipline.
Sure.
But how, and some people hated it. Some people just couldn't stand it. How do you find that fine line? Because you look intimidating. You look like a very intimidating wrestling coach. I mean, you've got the dark brooding eyes.
Yeah.
It's a good look. It's a good look.
Thank you.
How do you, you seem to have such a perfect level of grace. And
I appreciate, it's interesting because I have background in both the old style coaching and the joy that you see today.
Sure.
And then I also have some background in dance. My niece, my sister's daughter, was the captain of the dance team at Wake Forest. And she was the choreographer and head dancer, or one of the head dancers for Demi Lovato and Halsey.
Sure.
Awesome. Tour. Yeah. So she's quite talented. And then her brother is the defensive coordinator for Duke football down at the University.
Wow.
Yeah. So very accomplished family.
Very.
But I was raised in the Lombardi era, the Dan Gable era, where you just kept working. You just outworked everybody, and you were just nose to the grindstone. Very militaristic. Very And so I've evolved though as I've seen the generation, and I've seen where you can actually get more out of someone, even though there's still that incredible love on both ways of coaching. Through joy. And Cale Sanderson, who coaches at Penn State, which has been the gold standard for wrestling for the past 10 years, they just have a blast in practice. So you can get, and the thing about it too is my second cousin was a guy named Jerry Tarkanian, and Jerry was a very well known, very well respected, and one of the top NCAA basketball coaches of all time. He had a national championship at UNLV back in 1990, beat Duke actually. And he was the coach that I watched that merged or transitioned those two types of coaching styles, because they had joy as early as the late 80s, early 90s with him. But he came from that old school, Army-like mentality. But both coaches engender joy and loyalty. I mean, those guys that played for Lombardi, if you hear them, well, now they're really old now. But when they were interviewed as they got 10, 15 years away from football, they would tear up. He was their dad, man. And the same way these guys feel about Cale Sanderson. Same way they feel about, Dan Gable. So.
But I'm sure that your wrestlers feel the same way about you. And I'm so impressed with your, was it WIF? It's Wrestlers in Business Network, WIBN.
Yes.
That you constantly give back to them. And I'm sure so many come back and say how you have impacted their lives. And that must just feel great.
It's interesting because the guy that started the brainchild was of Aaron Grossman. And he was the captain of my 92 team. And one of the things that he said to me, this was a few years prior to starting Wrestlers in Business with me and a few other wrestlers. He says, when I was being coached by you, I wanted to be you. Because I would walk into practice with a suit because I was a businessman, and then I go get changed, right, and come back in, my wrestling outfit, whatever, shorts and t-shirt.
Power just stood for power.
Yeah, and so he's actually, I think he's actually a more successful businessman than I am. But I've taught him stuff and he's taught me stuff. So we're still teaching each other. It's fascinating. It truly is.
That's incredible. Yeah. What is your business? What is your business?
Yeah, well, we started as a marketing agency, and we were the pretty much the in-house agency for a product I invented called Cough Pops, cough drop on a stick. Yeah, we took that international. We were in all 50 states, Canada, Mexico, Middle East, and we were in every major retailer: Target, CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, Rite Aid, you name it, we were in it.
Gosh.
And
awesome.
We had that from 1998 to 2006. And so what we did was, what we learned as the in-house agency for that product, I was on the cover of every major newspaper, magazine, you name it, was we took a little bit of money and made a lot of things with it. And so we showed that to the marketplace, and that's how we really grew exponentially. And, we won all the awards and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, I saw marketing become commoditized, and a lot of the fun, all the digitization, all the analytics, and all the fun kind of going out of it, right? I said, well, what do I want to evolve to be? And so what I started to see was I got really good at the P&L and the fun stuff about running business. So I really knew from the top line to the bottom line and everything in between what to do and what not to do. And so I evolved my company into a best practices company. So we're a strategic partner for companies. We go in, we triage them, we find out what's right with them, what's wrong with them, where do they want to be and why, and how fast. And we put together a program with our strategic partners, myself and my executives quarterback that, and we engage and we take them to the next level.
Unbelievable. What were the cough drops called again?
Cough Pops. Cough Pops.
Cough Pops.
Cough drop on stick.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
That's brilliant. I've gotten the spungy kind while in the hospital.
Yeah.
With those moisturize your mouth. Yeah. So it's kind of the same type of deal.
Yeah, it was just basically a lollipop that was a cough. That was a
cough drop.
Yeah, that's it.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Was there a controversy with kids, almost like the Tide Pods?
No, because what happened was it was actually a better way of delivering a cough drop. So you didn't aspirate. And that's how we came up with it. It was my brother-in-law who's a doctor. We lost him 2 years ago, sadly.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's such a shame. He's a beautiful, beautiful man. But he was. I was at my sister's house. This is the father of the dancer and the football coach, right? And he's holding a lozenge in my niece's mouth. She was like 3.5, 4 years old. This is the dancer, right? Way back in the day. And I go, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, I don't want her to aspirate. So I'm holding it in her mouth while she sucks on it." I go, "Well, there's got to be a better way than that." And he goes, "Yeah, why don't we put a stick on it?" I go, "Okay, why don't we?" And we did. And that was
brilliant. That's brilliant. I love that.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
Oh you have such a well-rounded background for this podcast and for everything you're doing moving forward, because you have earned it, and you continue to push forward and help other people. It's just incredible. I'm very inspired by this today. What are your goals moving forward, and how can we support you? And can you also talk about just briefly on your nutrition and your own fitness regimen at your age, looking so spectacular?
Oh, thanks.
I think that helps, especially with the movement of the dad bods.
Yeah,
during the pandemic. You can help a lot of
anti-dad bod. I have a chest and a 29-inch waist.
So is my dad. He fights it with everything.
God bless. But the ultimate goal for my company and for the podcast is to get to as many ears and hearts as possible. and to interview as many remarkable individuals as I possibly can, and continue to keep that high content and high quality up as much as possible. So
I'm going to start sending you people that are amazing that I've interviewed or are good friends of mine. And you will just expand your network like crazy. Like one is a quadriplegic who has not once had a negative thought, attitude, spoken word at all. And it's completely changed his life, but he is just a beautiful person. And he started a personal training business for quads and paraplegics.
That's fantastic.
Unbelievable. So I'll send you so many things. And then I would love to talk about how your anti-dad bod, how you fight it and how you can help other men in your nutrition regimen and your fitness.
Well, I start the day with a iced coffee with a little bit of organic, half and half. And then I eat one ingredient foods in. I eat foods that are self-contained. So I eat a piece of broccoli or pineapple or a banana or a tomato or a piece of fish.
Foods.
Whole food. One ingredient. I don't like to eat complex processed stuff. Okay? Because I want the body to recognize it as fuel and become very efficient. But I also want to enjoy it. And I do a lot of seasoning. So I use a lot of herbs and spices, not salts, And so we do a lot of that. And then I also treat myself. I don't really, if I want to have a piece of candy, I eat a piece of candy. If I want to eat a piece of cake or a donut, but I don't eat 2. I don't eat 5. I don't eat them every day. Okay? Because if you start to take away from you, you then start to live in fear. I'm not going to have it.
Right.
I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to have it. So that's where this comes from, because we've always lived in famine. That's why we're so fat, because we think we're in famine. So we got to feed. So your mind you can use your mind to say, no, we're okay. We're okay. And also too, I also constantly watch, my intake of certain things that I think are deleterious to good health. And I cut back on those. So I don't drink very much. I've never smoked. I've never taken a drug in my life. And so I just, I try to live a very pristine life that way. And then I walk a lot. I lift. I still do some wrestling, but it's mostly sparring. It's not a lot of football because it's difficult on the joints. You have to watch inflammation. Mm-hmm. And a lot of cals. I did 185 push-ups today and about 150 sit-ups. So
good for you. Is that an everyday thing? 185 push-ups, 150 sit-ups?
I vary because I don't want to get too routine, so that my muscles get some semblance of, I like to be like change it up and give them some variety, so that they don't get that muscle memory and you don't get the validation of it. And so,
absolutely.
So like if I lift, I don't do cals, right? Okay. If I'm walking a lot, I'll do a little bit more upper body. Sure. So I just
but I do think resistance training is key, keeping that muscle on for sure.
Right.
In fact, my dad, when he just retired, mm-hmm. now he works construction.
Sure.
Just so he can be physical all the time. And he said, I'll work until I can't work anymore.
Well, that's what Jean-Claude Van Damme said. He said, I'll be muscular at 70.
Yep, exactly.
Muscles, man.
For sure. Yep. But it's inspiring. But yeah, there's a lot of males having the problem with the dad bods, and a lot of celebrities have come on and shown their stomachs. I'm sure you've seen. So it's very inspiring. And I think that exercise and health is just the key to youth. Sure. I mean, you look at someone your age versus someone else in Cleveland your age, especially in the Midwest.
Yeah, I was just at a reunion of my guys from high school, and it was pretty telling. So,
yeah, very much so.
But I love those guys, but man, wow, what have they been doing?
Exactly. It's just complacency and just kind of, again, like you said, and maybe non-self-love, who knows? But, and one final question, if you were to start over and the UFC and the MMA were as big as they were then, would you have gone into that sport?
Yes, there's not even a slight hesitation. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I loved getting hit and hitting. I loved it. I mean,
Yep.
I loved ringing my bell and ringing other people's bell. I just loved
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think I wasn't the greatest technical wrestler, but I was pretty tough, and I had a pretty high tolerance for pain. So I think I could have done okay. But the thing that I will tell you is, looking back, I've had 6 fairly bad concussions, and so at times it tends to give me some headaches and some vertigo. And
Sure.
so so that's also something that people have to look at, because that sport is brutal when it comes to knockouts. Brutal.
There are no rules. It's no holds
Yeah,
barred. It is.
brutal. So,
In fact, one of the females got, I think she was hit so hard. I think it was the one from Brazil.
Mhm.
Um, but the Brazilian hit another girl so hard that she actually went into menopause. She went into premenopause.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It completely ruined her thyroid.
Holy,
Isn't that crazy?
that's terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a brutal sport, but I would have done it, no doubt.
Good for you. Respect. It's like my favorite. I absolutely love it.
Well, Stipe Miocic.
And I love boxing.
Stipe Miocic. He just lost, but man, what a heavyweight. He's a Cleveland boy.
Yeah.
He's something. He's something.
And I went to school with Brock Lesnar.
Oh, Brock, yeah.
Yeah.
What an animal.
So,
I watched him win his national title in 2000.
very cool.
I watched him lose to Stephen Neal in '99.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
yep.
Yeah. You got to get back out there and see those fights again live. It'd be amazing. So, well, thank you so much.
Oh, and it was
Coach
a pleasure.
Cimoroni.
Love your soul. It's fantastic.
Oh,
Comes through.
absolutely. And you can watch for Coach Cimoroni and his wonderful stories, wonderful inspiring stories, his coaching businesses, hearing how he went just the vast success and how he still treats himself but still looks super hot.
Oh, thanks.
It is in his retirement years, and I just wish you the best. And I'll put all of your social media in the podcast notes and everything like that.
Well, thank you for having me, Ann. It's been a pleasure, and you're dynamite. Thanks.
And that was Coach Peter Cimoroni of the Blood Time Podcast. We appreciate you for listening, and please subscribe and rate the show on iTunes. You can also listen on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Luminary Tuned In, or at Believe.com. You can reach out to me for any questions or topics you'd like covered on the show at Ann McDaniels or at Ann McDaniels Actress. And I will see you next time on So